I wonder if I could paint these nails. Do skeletons even have nails? Hi honeys, it's me Megan and welcome back to my spooky channel where I'm here to satisfy all of your spooky needs. I hope you guys enjoyed my last two videos. If you haven't checked them out, then go watch them. But there's not much I have to say other than that. Let's get spooky. So today we will be talking about Donald Harvey, otherwise known as the Angel of Death. Donald was a nurse's aide, a nurse's assistant. He basically just had a lot of different jobs throughout hospitals, and he worked in different hospitals, just bounced around from job to job, but he murdered patients from 1970 to 1987. The estimated number of victims was around 37 to 57 people, but Donald claims that he killed 87 patients. Donald Harvey was born on April 15, 1952 in Butler County, Ohio, but quickly after he was born, his family moved to Boonville, Kentucky. Growing up, Donald was well liked by his teachers, but all of his peers said that he was unapproachable and that he was a loner, and all of them said that he was a teacher's pet. He gravitated towards adults and would always just want to hang around the teachers and the adults and the cafeteria staff, and basically just didn't want to be around other kids. He was very smart and he was very good at school, but he just thought it was so boring he dropped out of school in the 9th grade. While growing up, he was allegedly being sexually abused by his uncle and by another male neighbor. In 1970, when he was 18, he went to Marymount Hospital in London, Kentucky to help take care of his sick grandfather. He visited so often, he became a familiar face around the hospital, and the hospital offered him a job as an orderly. Harvey accepted the job and was immediately placed in a position where he spent a lot of alone time with patients. His responsibilities were giving medications to patients, inserting catheters, and basically just taking care of any personal or medical need that the patient had. On May 30th, 1970, just 2 weeks into his job, a patient, Logan Evans, angered Harvey by rubbing feces in his face. So Donald decided to smother him with a plastic bag and a pillow. Also in 1970, Harvey began a sexual relationship with a married man named Vernon Midden. Vernon was an undertaker in the occult, so he exposed Donald to some parts of it. The relationship only lasted 7 months, but the information that Donald was exposed to had a bigger impact on his life. During the relationship, Midden gave Harvey a lot of information about how our human body reacts to certain things, such as lack of oxygen. Over the next 10 months that he worked at the hospital, he allegedly killed 15 people. He would often smother them or hook them up to faulty oxygen tanks, but when he was angered, his methods would become a lot more brutal. For example, one patient had an argument with Harvey because they believed Harvey was trying to kill them. So they got into a fight, and apparently the patient knocked Harvey out by hitting him in the back of the head with a bedpan. Once Harvey woke up and recovered, he snuck into his room that night and stuck a coat hanger into his catheter. As a result of the puncture, his wound became infected and he died a few days later. March 31st, 1971 was the last day that Harvey worked at Marymount Hospital because that night he was arrested for burglary. When Harvey was arrested, he was drunk, and so he kept muttering that he was a murderer. An investigation began on Harvey because of his claims of being a murderer, but no evidence came up, so they dropped all charges except for the burglary charges. At this point, things were not going well for Harvey, so he decided to enlist in the U.S. Air Force. He was soon sent home with an honorable discharge for medical reasons, whatever that means. Returning home just fueled his depression, so he tried to kill himself. In July 1972, Harvey decided to commit himself to the Veterans Administration Medical Center. He was released after 90 days, but while he was there, he received 21 electric shock therapy treatments. After that, Harvey had multiple jobs in different hospitals until around 1975. According to his later confessions, Harvey was able to control his urge to kill during this time period, but a lot of criminologists and psychologists and researchers and just a lot of different people came up with the theory that his urges were controlled was really just the amount of access that he had to patients and the amount of alone time he had with them was very limited, so he just didn't have the same access to kill his patients. This could also explain why he jumped from job to job, because he was trying to look for that one job that was similar to Marymount Hospital, so he would have more alone time, more responsibilities, just more opportunities to kill patients. In 1975, Harvey moved back to Cincinnati, Ohio, and got a job at the Veterans Administration Medical Center, which he was in earlier. He worked as a nursing assistant, housekeeping aide, cardiac catheterization technician, and an autopsy assistant. So all of these jobs are very different, and they all give him different access to patients and to medical journals, and to just learn these different techniques that he could use to kill patients. It is believed that while Harvey worked here, he killed 15 more people. His killing methods went from just smothering people and setting up faulty oxygen tanks to now injecting cyanide, rat poison, and arsenic into their body and into their food. He kept a diary of all of his murders. I'm just going to read a few of them. One patient, he pressed a plastic bag and a wet towel over their mouth and nose and suffocated them. Another patient, he sprinkled rat poison into their dessert. He added arsenic to orange juice, or he would add cyanide to orange juice for other patients. He would inject cyanide into tubes, like IV tubes or any tubes that were hooked up to their body. One patient, he injected cyanide into their butt. He would disconnect life support machines, and one patient, he injected air into their veins. While Harvey was committing all of these crimes, he was refining his technique by reading medical journals. So he was studying the way that our body reacts to different things. And he was learning how to use the human body and the patient's medical conditions to conceal his crimes. Over the years, he collected around 30 pounds of cyanide that he would slowly take from the hospital and keep at home. He would often mix arsenic and cyanide in like a little bottle and bring it with him to work, and then when doctors weren't looking, he would slowly pour it into people's food and drinks. So he did not only kill his patients, he also tried to kill some people in his personal life. In the 1980s, Harvey moved in with his gay lover, Carl Howler. Harvey thought that Carl was cheating on him, so he began to poison his food. He would put arsenic in his food, just a little bit though, so that he was just ill enough so he couldn't leave the house to go cheat on him. One time, Harvey got into an argument with his neighbor, Diane Alexander, so he poisoned her drink with hepatitis serum. She got infected, and her infection was luckily treated, and she survived. Another neighbor, Helen, was not as lucky. Harvey put arsenic into one of her pies, and she died later that week in a local hospital. In April of 1983, Donald got into an argument with Carl's parents, Henry and Margaret, so he began to poison their food. On May 1st, 1983, Henry Howler, Carl's dad, had a stroke and was sent to Providence Hospital. Donald visited Henry at the hospital, and he put arsenic into his food. Later that night, Henry Howler died. Donald continued to poison Carl's mother, Margaret, on and off for the next year, but he was unsuccessful in his attempts to kill her. In January of 1984, Carl broke off this relationship with Donald and asked Donald to move out. Donald was so angry at this rejection that he tried to poison and kill Carl for the next 2 years. His attempts never worked, but he was able to send Carl to the hospital for poisoning a few times. There's such a large number of victims, and even more victims that Donald claims he killed, that I can't go into detail about every single one, but I will tell you about just a few of them. So this may be disturbing for some of you, just warning you now. One victim, Harvey Williams, died because Donald set up a faulty oxygen tank, and he couldn't breathe, so he suffocated and died. Another victim, Elizabeth Wyatt, Harvey cut off her oxygen supply completely and just watched her suffocate and die. One victim, James Tyree, Donald killed by putting in the wrong size catheter and holding him down until he started vomiting blood and choked on his own blood and died. One victim, Eugene McQueen, was not supposed to be laid on his stomach, so Donald, of course, laid him on his stomach, held him down, and let him drown in his own bodily fluids. One victim, Ben Gilbert, Donald killed by putting a coat hanger into an oversized catheter into Ben, and this punctured his bowels and his bladder, so he went into shock and died. Like I said, these are just a few of the examples. There are so many different methods, stories, and different ideas behind each of these murders, and the police can only account from 37 to 57 of them, and that's a pretty big range. When Donald was leaving work on July 15, 1985, the police thought that he was acting suspiciously, so they stopped him and searched his bag. In his bag, they found a gun, surgical needles and gloves, a cocaine spoon, medical journals, hypodermic needles, and a biography of a serial killer. These are a lot of dangerous things to carry in your bag, especially if you work at a hospital. and the police only fined him $50 for carrying a firearm on federal property. And what they told him was he either had to resign from his job or he would get fired. 7 months later, in February of 1986, Donald got another job at another local hospital. He was hired as a part-time nurse's aide at Cincinnati's Drake Memorial Hospital. His new employers were not aware of the incident at the last hospital when he was stopped and searched, and in his work folder, nothing but good things were said about him. Over the next 13 months that he worked there, Donald Harvey killed 23 patients. Nobody was suspecting anything until April 1987. John Powell died. He was in comatose, but he was recovering, so they did not expect him to die. When the coroner was doing the autopsy, she smelled a faint scent of almonds. This is an indicator that there was cyanide somewhere in his body. Authorities began to look into Harvey because they noted that he was one of the only people who had access to John right around the time of his death. And his coworkers gave him the nickname Angel of Death because he was always the last person to see a patient right before they died. You're gonna give this guy that nickname, but you're not gonna question anything that happens? In April 1987, police searched Harvey's apartment and they found jars of cyanide and arsenic, occult books, medical journals, and his detailed diary of all of his murders. He was arrested and locked up for life. On March 30th, 2017, Donald Harvey was beaten to death by an inmate. During all of these killings, his coworkers and friends never suspected that it could be him. They all thought that he was such a charming and charismatic person and that he was so kind and loving and genuine. They really thought he was the last person to be doing this. In an interview with CBS, Harvey said that he liked playing God. He liked having the power of someone's life in his hands and deciding who will live and who will die. So of course, the biggest question in everyone's head is, how did he get away with this for so long? Harvey was asked this question and he told reporters that he was able to get away with it for so long because doctors are overworked and do not see patients who just died. They send a resident to do it and then they just get sent off to the funeral home. So the doctor never even comes to double check if the patient's dead or how they died or really ask any questions. He also blamed the hospitals for allowing him to treat patients like this. I know that Donald is such an awful and messed up human, but I kind of agree with him on this. Being a doctor or a nurse or basically having any job in the medical field, you have to be some of the smartest people out there. And the smartest people, the ones we're supposed to trust our lives with the most, they don't notice that all of these people just mysteriously die right after this one nurse's assistant or this one random guy who doesn't even have a degree is the last person to see them. That freaks me out. I mean, how many times do I go to a hospital? I mean, not a lot. I'm fine. I'm really okay. But anyways, if I were to go to a hospital, I would want to be sure that every nurse, every doctor has the amount of education, has the amount of experience to do what they need to do to help me out. I don't need to be worried that I'm going to be eating my chocolate pudding, look down, and there's rat poison inside of it. Like, no, that's not okay. It just makes me so mad that doctors and nurses and everyone just let him get away with this for so long. He claimed to kill 87 people. That is a lot of people to kill within like 17, almost 20 years. It just blows my mind. I'm never going to hospital again. Just kidding. If I need to, I will. But it just freaks me out because how many other Donald Harveys could there be in this world? I mean, being a doctor or a nurse, that is a lot of power that they have. I mean, they have control over your life. Go to doctors, go to the hospital if you need them. I'm just saying this is freaky. I'm not saying don't go. Go. Take care of yourself. Do what you need to do. But just be aware, you know? I don't know how you'd be aware because I highly doubt these patients suspected anything of him. But, you know, trust your gut. Trust your instincts. That's all I'm giving you. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Okay, anyway, Donald Harvey, to the day he died, did not feel any remorse for his patients. In 1987, he told reporters, "I was putting people out of their misery. I hope if I'm ever sick and full of tubes or on a respirator, someone will come and end it." He thought that he was doing all of these patients a favor by murdering them. Donald Harvey is a sick, twisted man, and this the whole hospital and doctors not doing anything about it, even when he was arrested once for burglary and he was searched and they found a lot of dangerous things on him and they still didn't do anything. I mean, it's crazy. I know this was way back when, and I'm sure a lot of things have changed now, so like I said before, please go to the hospital, please go to the doctor. I still will be going. I mean, it's just spooky. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you had a spooky time with this one. I will see you all soon. Bye, honeys!